I find Metroidvania to be an interesting genre to talk about. On top of having a heavier emphasis on exploration backtracking to older areas after acquiring new tools, despite being genuinely linear at heart, there's often plenty of optional stuff player can do in between each main objective, whether it's a platforming challenge, a puzzle, or a boss fight. As such, your first time playthrough will have a distinct flair compared to how other people experience the game. For this video, as you can imagine, I will talk about the latter of the three which you can find in the game. Hollow Knight is a 2D Metroidvania where players traverse through the remains of the Dead Kingdom called Hollow Nest. Exploration is a big part of the early game, as the reasoning behind the protagonist's arrival to Hollow Nest is meant to be a mystery. As such, players will have to discover things on their own. Now, here is the interesting part. The map is rather big, which is uncommon among other games in this genre. While yes, the player will inevitably run into places that are inaccessible for one reason or another, they can still find things along the way. Among them are previously mentioned extra bosses. Hollow Knight has a total of 47 bosses, however, only 4 of them are actually mandatory to complete the game. Well, it would be 5 if it wasn't for a little trick players can do that allows them to skip that fight, and funny enough, it's related to the subject of this video. But I am getting ahead of myself. Here is an excellent take on an early game boss. Once player reaches the crossroads right here, there are 2 directions to choose from. If player goes down, very likely this one is going to be their first boss encounter. But if they go up instead, then they would reach him. Now that's however first impression. Player tries to go past the room, then suddenly the door shuts down before their eyes, and False Knight, who is at least 4 times the size of the player character, jumps out to the arena from behind, initiating the fight. The contrast between player character and him, alongside the choice of weapons, makes this encounter look like a David vs Goliath kinda deal, which gives the fight a sort of unique charm. After that, I've seen many first timers being too intimidated to even approach False Knight at first, because of that stunt, which is understandable all things considered. The moves themselves are pretty straightforward. Those are normal jump, which bosses use as a repositional tool, leap attack in case player is close, and slam to the ground attack, which sends a shockwave toward the player in case they are further away. As you may notice, the movement covers False Knight's bases pretty well. Thankfully, since he is meant to be a boss players find early, they are easy to understand once you see them a few times. Now, let's talk about how the boss fight plays out. False Knight has 3 phases, but it doesn't affect the fight that much. Beyond that, now every now and again, when he performs an attack, a bunch of barrels fall down from the ceiling. Well, except for one thing. During each phase transition, boss jumps to the middle of the arena and flares around with the mace, causing more barrels to fall down. Here's the thing. The combat revolves around knowing when to attack and when to heal. All of this thanks to one of the main mechanics, which is the soul meter. Every time player hits an enemy, they regenerate some amount of soul meter, which then can be used on spells and most importantly in this case, to heal. The tricky part is in case of False Knight, they won't be able to actually take soul out of him in the usual way. Instead, he has to be staggered and then they can regenerate the meter. As such, there is a heavy emphasis on being good enough to get through each phase without losing along the way. It's actually quite a unique aspect of the encounter, as unlike him, in most other boss fights in the game, as long as player doesn't get hit too often and heals in opportune moments, they can get through almost every fight without necessarily getting a full grasp on the boss's patterns. So, what makes this boss stand out among the others? For an early game boss, it has a lot of stuff going for it. Whether it's the boss introduction, the varied but telegraphed moveset that teaches the player the importance of observing and reacting accordingly, or some other unique quirks, like those barrels that you can redirect toward the boss, doing some extra damage, or that after reaching phase 2, the wall on the left can be destroyed and you can escape, leaving the fight for another time in case player struggles. Remember when I mentioned the number of required bosses to complete the game? While Foresight does give a useful key item that allows for easy access to a mandatory area, there is a way around it. Like sure, it may not be necessary for the alternative route to exist, but personally, I'm happy it is a thing. Those type of little touches go a long way, which can be good for establishing a good first impression. As for myself, the more I thought about this fight, the more I wanted to cover on this channel, and I'm happy that now I have an opportunity to do so. Overall, great boss with a sick theme. That will be the end for this video. I hope you have a great day.
Oh,